In the 5th century BC, the world trembled beneath the shadow of Persia. From the valleys of Egypt to the mountains of India, from the heart of Asia to the edge of the Aegean, the empire of the great king stretched across continents. It was the most powerful kingdom the world had ever seen. Millions of subjects, endless armies and fleets that blotted out the horizon. And yet, on the rocky shores of Greece, stood a scattering of small city-states, divided by rivalry, quarrelsome, and pride. They were nothing compared to Persia, but they prized something the empire could never command: freedom. When Persia came to conquer, the Greeks stood defiant, and in their defiance, they forged legends that echo to this day. This is the story of Marathon, of Thermopylae, of Salamis, and of Plataea. The battles that saved Greece, and with it, the foundations of Western civilization. The first storm broke in 490 BC. King Darius of Persia, angered by Athens' support for a revolt against his empire, sent an army across the Aegean to punish the defiant city. The Persian fleet landed at the plain of Marathon, a flat expanse north of Athens. There, waiting for them, stood a much smaller Greek force, mostly Athenians, joined by a few hundred Plataeans. The Spartans had promised aid, but their sacred festival delayed them. Athens was alone. The Persians numbered perhaps 20 to 30,000, supported by cavalry and endless ranks of archers. The Greeks, barely 10,000, armed as hoplites, heavy infantry, armored in bronze, with long spears and round shields. The two sides faced one another for days. Athens knew defeat would mean annihilation. Their city burned, their people enslaved. At last, the Greeks made their decision. Better to fight, better to die, than to kneel to the empire. The hoplites formed into line. Bronze helmets glinted in the morning sun. Shields locked together, spears braced. And then, the order was given. They ran. Across the plain of Marathon, the Athenians charged the Persians head-on, closing the distance before the archers could break their line. It was a gamble, a desperate rush against the greatest army in the world. The impact was thunderous. Spear met shield, bronze crashed against wicker. The phalanx drove deep into the Persian ranks, cutting them down, forcing them back. On the wings, the Greeks encircled the enemy, and soon the invaders were in chaos. The Persians broke. Thousands were cut down as they fled toward their ships, chased to the very sea. 7 Persian triremes were seized, others barely escaped. Against all odds, Athens had triumphed. The plain of Marathon was littered with bodies, Persians by the thousands, Athenians by the hundreds. But it was victory. Marathon became legend. It proved that Persia was not invincible, that free men fighting for their homeland could defy the might of empire. But even in victory, the Athenians knew the storm would come again. 10 years later, it came. King Darius was dead. His son Xerxes now ruled the empire, and he would avenge the humiliation of Marathon. Xerxes assembled the greatest invasion force the ancient world had ever seen. Herodotus speaks of hundreds of thousands, even millions. A host so vast, it drank rivers dry as it marched. Bridges of boats spanned the Hellespont, allowing his army to cross from Asia into Europe. His fleet stretched across the horizon, carrying supplies and soldiers in endless ranks. Greece trembled. Some cities submitted without a fight, but Athens and Sparta resolved to resist. The Greeks would not yield their freedom, no matter the cost. And so, a plan was made. To delay the Persians by land, the Spartans would hold the narrow pass at Thermopylae, the hot gates. By sea, the allied Greek fleet would confront Persia at Artemisium. It was here, at Thermopylae, that legend would be born. The pass of Thermopylae was a narrow defile between mountain and sea. Only a few men could fight abreast. making it the perfect place to resist a massive army. Into this narrow pass marched King Leonidas of Sparta with just 300 of his warriors. They were joined by several thousand allies from other cities, Thespians, Thebans, and more. But it was the Spartans, bound by their code of honor, who stood at the heart of the defense. For 2 days, the Persians hurled their soldiers against the wall of shields. Wave after wave, the Medes, the Scythians, even the elite immortals, Persia's finest troops, were slaughtered. The narrow pass negated their numbers. Greek spears and discipline held firm. The cliffs ran red with blood. The sea choked with bodies. But betrayal would succeed where force could not. A local named Ephialtes revealed a hidden mountain path to the Persians. The Greeks were surrounded. Leonidas understood what must be done. He dismissed most of the allies, but remained with his 300 Spartans and a few hundred Thespians who refused to abandon them. They fought to the last. Swords shattered, spears splintered, shields broken. The Spartans fought with daggers, with fists, with teeth. At last, overwhelmed, they fell. Leonidas' body was taken, his men cut down. The pass was lost, yet Thermopylae was not a defeat. It was sacrifice, a sacrifice that bought Greece precious time, a sacrifice that showed the world that even in death, freedom was stronger than tyranny. With the pass opened, Xerxes marched south. Athens, unable to resist, was evacuated. Its people fled to the island of Salamis and to the Peloponnesus. When the Persians entered the city, they found it deserted, and then they burned it. The flames consumed the temples, the homes, the very heart of Athens. The Acropolis, sacred to the goddess Athena, was set alight. Smoke rose into the sky, a symbol of Greece's darkest hour. But Athens was not finished. For on the sea, the fate of Greece would be decided. Themistocles, the cunning Athenian admiral, had a plan. The Persian fleet was vast, but unwieldy. If he could lure them into the narrow straits of Salamis, the smaller Greek ships could strike with deadly effect. Xerxes, eager for victory, took the bait. From his throne on the shore, he watched as his fleet advanced into the straits. Then the Greeks struck. The confined waters turned Persia's numbers against them. Greek triremes rammed and shattered the larger Persian ships. Oars splintered, decks overturned, soldiers thrown screaming into the sea. The battle became a slaughter. By nightfall, the Persian navy was broken. Xerxes, furious, ordered retreat. He abandoned much of his army in Greece and returned to Asia, his dream of conquest shattered on the waters of Salamis. The following year, 479 BC, the Persians who remained in Greece were still a threat. At Plataea, the Greeks assembled one of the largest hoplite armies ever seen. Spartans, Athenians, Corinthians, and allies united. The battle was fierce. For days, the armies skirmished and maneuvered. Finally, the Greeks clashed with the Persians in full force. Spears thrust, shields locked, lines surged forward. In the chaos, the Persian commander Mardonius was slain. With his death, the Persian army collapsed. They fled the field, broken and defeated. At Plataea, the Greeks had triumphed. The invasion was over. Persia's dream of conquering Greece was finished. From Marathon to Plataea, a generation of Greeks had stood against the greatest empire the world had ever known. At Marathon, they proved Persia could bleed. At Thermopylae, they showed that sacrifice could inspire nations. At Salamis, they turned the tide with cunning and courage. At Plataea, they ended the war with iron and discipline. The cost was terrible. Cities burned, warriors slain, lives shattered. But Greece endured. And with Greece, so too endured the ideas that would shape the West. Democracy, philosophy, the pursuit of freedom. These battles were not merely clashes of armies. They were struggles for the soul of a civilization. And in the dust of Marathon, in the fire of Athens, in the blood of Thermopylae, in the waves of Salamis, and in the fields of Plataea, freedom was preserved. The world would never forget.